The internet has been going wild, it seems, the last week or so, with gamers threatening to boycott Games Workshop. Now, as much as that might come as a surprise to a lot of you, there are a ton of reasons going into it, things to do with the new changes to how they're protecting their IP, things like release fatigue. There's a lot that goes into it, and so to an extent, it's not too hard to sympathise with why people might be getting fed up. Now, personally, I'm not looking to boycott Games Workshop, and the reason I'm not looking to boycott Games Workshop is because they don't get a huge share of my spending money anyway. Between the miniatures that I buy from other miniatures companies, the miniatures that I buy direct from sculptors to 3D print at home, I only really buy stuff from GW if it's things that I really particularly want or things that I'm buying for a commission. So for me personally, I don't have any major need to boycott GW, but one thing I will say is I am a bit fed up with 40k, and for months now I've been starting to look at other systems because I'm just getting a little bit tired of the way GW distributes their rules. So whether it's a full-blown boycott that you're looking at, or whether you just want some alternatives, whether you just want a few other things that you might like to play, I've compiled a short list here today of games that I think are great alternatives to Games Workshop games. Okay, I'm going to begin things with Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings by Parabellum Games, and I'm beginning with this one because it plays with a pretty similar model count to Age of Sigmar. And not only that, but it's got a pretty simple, easy to pick up system, so it's quite a good alternative to Age of Sigmar. Now, I actually picked this game up really early into its release cycle because the core box is just such unbelievably good value. You get a hell of a lot of miniatures in there for really not very much money. But I did notice back then that whilst those miniatures were very cheap in that core box, they weren't the most detailed. And to be honest, when you weren't buying them in those box sets, they were pretty brutally expensive. However, they have started to release their newer kits in resin, and they started to do a lot more in the way of deals and combi packs and stuff like that, so it looks like they've been pretty quick to address those issues. The game has a good degree of depth, it's well balanced, it has good lore, and it's a pretty decent army game all round, with a lot of future support clearly being thought of in the early days. There's already new factions planned, and there's, I believe, at least maybe two new factions already been released. So if you're in the UK and you want to check out Conquest, the channel's sponsor Lazy Dragon Gaming actually stocks it, and there's always a link to them in the description every week. However, if you're anywhere else in the world or just want to have a look at the system in general, I'll also put a link into Parabellum Games. Battletech by Catalyst Game Labs has been a huge central talking point around this whole subject of mass GW exodus. There have been countless social media posts that I've seen at least where people are talking about, if you don't want to play GW games anymore, come on over to Battletech. And I think it's kind of easy to understand why. For a start, the game has been going in one form or another for nearly as long as GW have been a company. It has a related tabletop role-playing game called Mech Warrior, which has also been going for years. It's spawned video games, novels, audiobooks, all of which are actually very good. I'm currently listening to a Battletech audiobook and I'm really enjoying it. It does also have a cheesy 90s cartoon that's maybe not so good, but if you like cheesy 90s cartoons and very early CGI, you might enjoy it. The game is also miniatures agnostic, meaning you can indeed turn up to tournaments with those 3D printed armies, something that I know again has been kind of a controversial talking point around Games Workshop recently. If it's about the right size, it's considered fair game. So if you're looking for comparable to Games Workshop levels of expandability, of background, of depth, of freedom in customization even, it's fairly likely that Battletech is probably the best contender. Battletech also makes all of its basic quick play rules completely free to access online, and as I'm sure you can imagine, for a game that's about 35 years old, there is a depth of online resources available. The game is played in several different ways, the most advanced of which is a very deep, quite math-heavy, chart consulting, kind of sprawling battle game that takes a really long time to play, the simplest of which is pretty much comparable to a fairly advanced board game. So Battletech really does have something for everyone, and the miniatures are kind of adorable. I personally advise dropping 20 quid on the beginner box to get a pretty good idea of the official miniatures, the simplified rule set, that kind of thing, before deciding how deep you want to go, because Battletech really is a whole world into itself. The first of the skirmish games I'll talk about today, Infinity kind of sits in a weird spot as an alternative to Games Workshop games for a number of reasons. Now, I haven't personally played it, so I'm relying here on things that I've been told by people who have. So what I'm going to try to do is just only relay stuff that I've generally heard as a consensus by most people that I've spoken to that have played the game. The system is fairly complex, but is by no means impossible to learn, and the movement system is probably the thing that most players say is likely to cause a bit of confusion for people migrating from a Games Workshop experience. Interestingly though, I have also heard that that movement system has some quite strong similarities to the proposed new Kill Team movement system, something which was quite off-putting for a lot of people. I of course have to say that I personally don't know how it works though, so if you're an Infinity player watching this video, please do let me know in the comments below a little bit more about how that movement system works, how it compares to the new Kill Team system, because I'm really interested to find out a bit more about that. Infinity is one of the games that I've got shortlisted for wanting to check out myself. Another thing that is at least noteworthy is that the miniatures are expensive. These starter squads, for example, that I've been periodically flashing up while we've been talking about the game, they come in at about €85 each for about 9 models. However, the models are also the biggest draw because while they may be pricey, they are undeniably some of the nicest sculpted miniatures in existence right now. They are metal, which won't be for everyone, but I do have to say, as someone who's worked with a lot of metal miniatures over the years, if you've never worked with metals before, try not to let it worry you too much. It's really not as scary or daunting as you might expect it to be, and in fact, personally, I find metal easier to work with than cast resin. The other thing we absolutely have to talk about is the art style that they use for their painted examples, because it's often a talking point online. Having all the volumetric work of your favourite virtuoso European competition painters, but also featuring starker, brighter edge highlighting even than we are used to seeing in Games Workshop examples, it's a really interesting and different way to approach painting a miniature. In fact, at the time of recording this, I'm actually dipping my toes into my first Infinity miniature. I've got a work in progress at the moment, and I'm having a go at doing this painting style for the first time ever, and it's actually really fun to explore. It's so different to what I normally do and so distinctive in how it looks. I'm a huge fan, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm including Stargrave and Frostgrave together because they have a lot of similarities, which kind of makes sense, I guess, because they are essentially, albeit a little bit of an oversimplification, fantasy and sci-fi counterparts of the same game. But what makes both of these games especially refreshing if you're a GW player is that whilst the rules and lore are laid out with quite a lot of depth, there's an active sense of encouragement for you to tailor the experience to your personal needs. And the game continues this thread of agnosticism towards itself as well by actively encouraging you to use whatever miniatures you want, despite the fact that there actually are official miniatures from North Star military figures. So, you know, if you're the kind of gamer who really likes to stay on brand with their miniatures, that's an option for you, but you're by no means strong-armed or expected to do so. What this means is that if you're coming to the Frozen City or the War-Torn Galaxy from being a Games Workshop exclusive gamer, there's no problem with you repurposing your favourite Kill Team, Necromunda Gang or Warcry squad? I don't know, I never got into Warcry. The systems employed by both games use D20 rolls made against either opposed rolls or fixed difficulties, which gives them a really RPG-like feel. The game can be very swingy, however, so in my games at least we use a system of rerolls. And again, this is something the game has no problem with you doing. You're encouraged to tailor that experience. Of all of the games that we've spoken about today, Stargrave is actually the one that seems to, for some reason, resonate the most with me personally. In fact, so much so that we've decided to start a Stargrave tournament soon in my Patreon Discord. So if that's something that you're interested in getting in on, check out the link to my Patreon below. The tiers start from £1 a month, so it's not expensive to get involved. And So that would be my 5 recommendations for games to look into if you're one of the people who's decided that they're a bit fed up of Games Workshop and are looking for greener pastures. That said, if you're also just someone like me who likes to dip their toes into lots of other games and doesn't really consider Games Workshop to be the be-all and end-all of miniature gaming, you might find some of these interesting too. In fact, chances are you've probably heard of some or even all of them. There are certainly a wealth of incredible publishers making amazing games these days, including indie publishers doing absolutely wonderful things through Kickstarter and the like. But of course, this being YouTube and through my personal lens, I might well have missed your favourite. So if there are any of these games that you personally love and you think that I've missed out, drop a comment below and let me know what they are, because I'm always looking to expand my horizons and keep my eyes open for other things that are available. So until next time folks, don't forget to like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date when more stuff comes out. I'd like to wish you happy hobbying folks, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this one. I'll see you in the next one, and bye-bye for now.